Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Alicia Moore is someone who's curious about the transitions in life. Her book, Crushing It in College, is a roadmap for young people navigating their college years. She writes about taking responsibility for successes and failures and molding those experiences into the basis for a good life. And what is a good life? Come listen in. Alicia, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, Pat, thank you for having me here. My story is pretty consistent with anyone else who's aging. I'm entering into a new phase of my life. I'm in retirement, and so that got me interested in looking back at various transitional phases in my life, which prompted me to write my book for college kids, starting with the first transition into adulthood.
That transition to college is so important because if you blow it, you're setting yourself off course for many years, actually. What are some of the things that can happen to young people?
Well, I think the key is for many of our young people, they haven't had the same sort of self-initiating responsibilities that people in the older generation had. They've been not to put a pejorative term on it, but they've been coddled a little bit. Their parents have been very actively involved with them. And part of that may have been a bit of a societal change, but the result of that is many of our young adults or youngsters who are transitioning into adulthood haven't had the same sort of independent experiences that many of us had. And there's a cost for that.
And the cost is?
Well, the cost is that confidence comes from competence. You have to be able to have the experience and gain the awareness that you can learn, you can make mistakes and recover from them, you can persevere over obstacles that get in your way. You can persevere till you get to the result that you want. And fundamentally, your journey is your own. So taking responsibility for that and making the most of it is on you.
I think there are life lessons whenever we hit these bumps. It's an opportunity to learn. And college sure is full of opportunities to learn. I mean, what are some of the key things that kids have to look at? I mean, just social life. That's hard right there.
It's particularly hard for a generation that grew up behind screens and playing video games as opposed to making these kind of connections in real life. It takes practice meeting people as an adult. It takes practice having conversations and being confident enough to approach people that you don't know, discerning about who are good for you in your social network. All of these things take practice. And some of our youngsters haven't had that practice in real life, which frankly is what college is, a perfect environment for that. Because you have a diverse group of people that you might never have met otherwise, all going through the same experience at the same time. So there's opportunities to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise, expand your horizons, and bond with people that in a way that you might not otherwise do.
I'm trying to remember the name of this woman. She's up at MIT, I believe. Oh, it's right. I'll come up with the name. But she studies communications. And, I know. The name of her TED Talk was Alone Together. I believe. And she has a picture of her daughter and two of their friends leaning against the couch in their family room, and they're all texting. No one's
Yes.
looking at each other. And she tells the story of a young man who came up to her after a talk one day, and he said, I really want to learn how to have a conversation. Pause. But not today. What
Interesting.
isn't it? But what do you do with that? Because the ability to communicate is critical. I know in the last week I've had two incidents where the communication was not optimal, and it really caused problems. And they were totally avoidable if, rather than just shooting emails back and forth, if the people involved would have stopped and talked for a little bit.
Yes. Yes. And there's another piece of it, Pat, that you bring up, and that is handling conflict. The fragility with which some of our children have been raised with this very fragile worldview and tolerance for others who aren't immediately in sync with you. So it's a communication problem. And then coming out of that becomes really a conflict problem that people don't necessarily know how to resolve either. You and I can be friends and not identical in our points of view, in how we approach things, in our priorities or other things. And it seems to me that people aren't as elastic and flexible, as empathetic and open in their approach to relationships as we have been.
Yeah, I think Mary Neal, who had a near-death experience, once said that if we could have compassion and understand where somebody came from, we would never harbor any negative feelings.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but I do think it could go a long way. And again, we come back to, I am such a strong adherent to the value of college, the college experience, and the college environment. And I know that it's been under a lot of societal pressure lately because of the cost and, is it worth it, and questioning all of that. To me, part of the value is not just in the vocational aspects of it. It's much more than the degree that you get. It's the ancillary skills and environment that can foster those kinds of understandings and empathy, because you're going through a similar experience with people that are so diverse. You learn. You have an environment for conversations that you might not otherwise have. And you get to know people from a perspective of a common bond. And from there can radiate out what the differences are. But I already know I like you. So although I don't like your point of view in politics or in how you spend your money or in who else you hang out with or whatever it is, I already know that I like you. And so I'm coming from a perspective of liking you, which lets me tolerate and maybe understand more where you are coming from.
College is such a unique environment. For most of us, we will probably never again have a period of time around a group of people where we have a strong common interest or drive. I was lucky I did have that later in my life with some of the sports and things I did, but really that's a rarity.
But Pat, that's the other thing about college. It's not just for the youngsters. People can go back to college in their middle years to gain new skills, to expand their own horizons, to keep up with changes and challenges, disruptions in technology or the economy or whatever. And older people are going to college. There's a person locally who graduated from Berkeley at 80, just in this last cycle. She got an additional degree at 80. College is a perfect environment for that too, because not only diverse geographies and socioeconomic conditions, but also ages. So older people can go back. They can go back just for fun. They can go back to gain a new hobby or to enhance skills, to keep up with technology, and in that college environment, in the classroom environment, to exchange ideas. Keeps them young, exposes the youngster to a different point of view. It's good for all.
It's so interesting. I think lifelong learning is something we all should quest after because it keeps us young and vibrant, alive and involved. And I think that's always been the case, actually. But now things are moving so fast that lifelong learning is absolutely essential. And the role of delivering education electronically, I think, is having a massive impact on how we learn in a good way. But on the other side, we're not developing those interpersonal skills.
Yeah, Zoom doesn't make up for in-person. That's for sure. I mean, if it's the only substitute we have, it's better than nothing. But it's not the same as that interpersonal connection. And we're social creatures. We need to be, we are part of a pack. We need to be part of a pack. And having that social network of people with whom we can have coffee, talk about things, moan about things, complain about things, but not too much, challenge each other, bring out the best in each other. I mean, it's really that social fabric is built from those relationships out. Yeah.
It is. And all the little verbal and physical clues that you pick up one-on-one, just the way somebody presents themselves, all that information is really important. I belong to a mastermind group in Phoenix. And last year at a get-together, I met one of the people in my mastermind group. And it's and he'd been on the podcast actually, and we're friends. We have great conversations, but his physical presence was very different, very powerful, very powerful. And that was not something that you picked up on Zoom.
Yeah.
You're working on something that really intrigues me, and that is on maintaining kind of intellectual flexibility, if you will, as you go into retirement. I know your book's not done yet, but talk a little bit about what intrigues you about that transition.
Well, candidly, I'm going through that transition myself. And my response to it, as is my husband and several of our friends, and I've observed quite a difference in how we have approached this new stage of our adventure. We have some friends who we can see their world is contracting down. They spend a lot of time binge watching things on television and just not really going out as much anymore. So meeting up at parties or other events is a big effort for them. We have others who are out there all the time. They can't travel enough. They can't do enough. They can't, always some new adventure. And as I watch those two groups of people, you can see that the ones that keep themselves challenged, that push themselves to go out, that push themselves to learn new things, that challenge themselves, that maintain their intellectual curiosity, you can see how much more vital they are. Their health is better. They look younger. They act younger. And it seems to me that, this life is such a gift for us that you hate to waste a single day. And closing off prematurely, or yes, as you hit a certain age, you do start thinking more that this is a terminal experiment. We don't know when the end date is, but somehow you feel a little bit closer to that end date, and it does start kind of creeping into your head. But the question is, what are you going to do with this gift that is the present, so to speak, right?
Well, and I think that I'll say 50 plus are fabulous years, or they should be fabulous years, because you're a little older, wiser, more experienced, probably a little more self-reflective, which leads to another realm of wisdom that usually you don't pick up on when you're just running around busy as you are when you're younger. I think that this last third of your life, if you will, is holds so much promise for us and for everybody around us.
Absolutely. And that's where sharing your gifts, sharing your experience and your knowledge, and doing it in a way that can connect with that next generation, that's how we grow on the shoulders of others, right? Our knowledge expands and allows for opportunities to do great things. And history is replete with people who came into their own in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, even their 80s, to make contributions to themselves, to their families, to their communities, to the regions, to the country, to the world. I mean, really, the possibilities are still endless. It's just making sure that we guard our mind against thinking that it's over before it is.
Or falling into a rut. I know some people who they wake up, they have the same thing for breakfast every day. They play golf with the same people. They go out for drinks with the same people, and then it's rinse and repeat the next day.
Right.
And I mean, a month of that might be really fun. You could have a great time. I don't think I'd last a month, but a month could be fun. But they're stuck, and they're not doing things to really expand their world when, for the first time in their lives, maybe they have the time to actually do that.
Yeah. There's a difference between merely existing and joyfully living, I think. And I think, the nice thing when you are older is that although there's a time horizon that's terminal, you have much more time in the world to go about your business how you want to. So nothing forces you. You're not on someone else's forced schedule that you have to do something by when, unless you impose it upon yourself. And so you can take these challenges, you can take steps into taking these challenges. You don't have to go out and, just change everything overnight. You can take a new course on gardening, or learn a new language, or both of those, and then plan your visit to, Versailles Gardens or whatever it is.
Or publish a book.
Or publish a book. Yeah, that was my big, that was sort of my big challenge that was bigger than I thought when I first started.
I don't think anything prepares you for this, for publishing a book. There's so much, if you're going to do it well, there is so much more involved than you ever imagine.
Right. And there's all the ancillary things to learn too. I myself am not a huge technology good person. I'm a technophobe to a certain extent, and it changes so quickly, and it's just so much work. It's not in my wheelhouse. It's not my favorite thing to do. But, in the course of writing my book, I had to form a company, because if I was going to do my book, I needed to be paid for it. I needed to be able to deliver it. So, there's all this setting up a business, and what does that look like? Setting up a website, getting your web name and setting up your website and all the things that has to do with it. And then there's the social media presence, which I'm still kind of working on. But there's all of these ancillary things that you learn along the way. And if you approach these sorts of things with grace and an understanding that you're doing this for you and for fun and for whatever good you can do in the world, right? There's a reason why you're doing it, and you can do it, and you can stumble and fall, and all of the same things that these kids are going to be learning as they become adults. I'm relearning again as I take on new challenges as an older person. So,
you mentioned living joyfully. I just had an interesting conversation with Elizabeth Rhino about joy in life. and how joy comes from within. It's not an external thing like, a new piece of jewelry makes you happy or a new car makes you happy. It's something that really comes from within.
Yeah, I agree.
How does a joyful life guide you?
Well, in my case, there are a couple of elements from it, and I think really it does stem from continuing to learn new things and to achieve new things. And as I said earlier, confidence comes with competence. So the more competent you become in new areas, that reinforces, wow, I can do this, and look what I did. And that pride that comes with that, fuels you to keep going.
And I think part of joy is being present.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And I would add, and thankful, being
Yes.
able to look around and take stock of the blessings that you have. Yeah.
Now, I think gratitude is absolutely critical to living a happy, maybe not happy, satisfied life, actually, is the word I'm thinking of. You feel such satisfaction with gratitude.
Yes. Appreciation.
Yeah.
You appreciate, and as a result of that, there's a certain contentment that comes with that. Because rather than making a comparative about what you don't have, you look at what you do have. And when you put your focus that way, then you have the foundation upon which to build, to grow, and to enjoy those things, the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah, and just to realize a really terrific life. I mean, nobody knows what their expiration date is. It
Yes.
could be younger, it could be older. But I think that once you recognize that that exists, it opens the door to living in joy, actually.
Yes. And there are so many things to be amazed by and appreciative of. It's crazy. I was watching a segment on TV the other day, and they were talking about it was the pictures that were coming back from whatever the telescope is that they have, and these amazing pictures of the universe. And it got me thinking, we as a species, look what we as a species have accomplished in terms of space exploration and what we understand about the oceans, what we understand about the planets, what we understand about ourselves, and all of the technology. We do amazing things. I mean, it's total heat wave. We still have electricity in our house, thankfully. So I have ice. I mean, I have ice. It's really hot. How cool is that? Someone did that. So something as simple as that, really, when you start to think about what we as a human species have accomplished, it's amazing. And we all add to that in our own way. What a great thing to be part of, right?
If you could pass along three pieces of wisdom to kids going to college and coming up through the world these days, what would you say to them?
The first thing I would say is recognize that you own your own life. This is yours. And the freedom that comes with that, the responsibility that comes with that, it's all going to be up to you. So take some time to think about what is important to you. What do you want to make out of your life? What would you like to accomplish? And use that as your North Star to help guide you as you go on your path for living. Look not just to what's immediately in front of you, but actually think about who you are and what you want, and use that as your guiding star. So I would say that number one. And number two, I would say map out a plan to that North Star, but be a little bit flexible, because life opens up opportunities. And if you're open to them, sometimes those side paths really are the ones that lead you to some of the most beautiful places. You can still be going towards your North Star, but you don't have to be on the freeway. You can take one of the side paths and maybe have a richer experience for it. And the third is to recognize that everyone goes through challenges, obstacles, sometimes can get derailed. And it's really important to remember that with the right perspective, if you can gain perspective and look at these obstacles as learning experiences, as an opportunity to gain experience or understanding or empathy or whatever lesson for you can come out of that experience, if you persevere and persist, if you can be resilient, you can get to where you want to go. Nothing is insurmountable if you don't let it become. So keep going, keep growing, and make it happen.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.